It was a lifelong goal of mine to be a good present father. I cannot let this be the first memory for my boys. Dad drunk, picking himself up off the floor. That moment is when it clicked that I was failing.
You're a morning person?
Yes.
Wasn't always.
Me
too. Today, I'm excited to chat with TJ White, a former Army Ranger, entrepreneur, and author and founder of Wooby Hoody.
For me, it goes back to the day I decided to get sober. You have to find your why. He always says control the controllables. And typically it's when you're at your lowest point and, business life, whatever, it means you're about to level up.
Welcome back to Diehard Entrepreneur Stories. I'm Devin Ramos, your host, and today I'm excited to chat with TJ White, a former Army Ranger, entrepreneur, and author and founder of Wooby Hoody, an outdoor apparel company. Growing up in South Central Kansas, TJ faced early challenges, including juvenile probation. But determined to rise above his circumstances, he pursued his dream of joining the elite 2nd Ranger Battalion, where he served as a non-commissioned officer, then later built a contracting career in international and domestic security. After a critical turning point in his life, TJ committed to sobriety and rebuilt his life, all while overcoming the everyday struggles of entrepreneurship. Since then, he's been able to use his skills he's learned through life's adversity and his military and contracting careers to build his company and invest in other business ventures. He wrote the best-selling book, Lead Your Adventure, and he's here to share his journey, his lessons, and how small daily choices create lasting change. Welcome, TJ.
Hey, thanks, Devin. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, brother. Thanks for coming along. So, TJ, before we jump into it, I'd love to know, what was it that led you to want to be an Army Ranger, man? Were you like one of the guys that knew it from birth, or like when did that come into play?
Yeah, I think as early as I can remember, that was always my goal. I remember middle school, playing out in the woods and stuff. I had a Ranger handbook. I had the Army survival manual. Nice. And I'd be flipping through pages out there trying to build traps and stuff like that. And I would read the Ranger handbook and I didn't even know what it meant yet. It was, like TM or TL, SL, all that stuff. Like I had no idea what it meant. And I would just go through it and read it. And I just thought it was cool, and I figured that knowledge was sticking in my head somewhere. And then I had a computer game called Spec Ops Bravo or something like that. And you were like, 2 Rangers, and you'd run around, and the very opening of it, they had like one of those little hua videos that was all just like the pictures of like night vision and all this stuff. And, they would say the Ranger Creed, and inadvertently I had memorized the Ranger Creed before I even left for the Army.
That's awesome, dude.
Knew it by heart. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, you saying that, it reminded me, man, I don't even remember how old I was, but I grew up, I didn't really know much about the military, but I remember I had a friend who was like crazy about this game, SOCOM, that came out, right? And he's like, oh, SOCOM. And I remember like after getting into the military and everything like that and becoming a part of SOCOM, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's funny. Like it kind of took me back. I'm like, oh, I remember that now. But yeah, that's a question that when I have an opportunity, I'm always really interested in understanding, because like for me, I grew up in a small town too. But I had like 1 or 2 people in my family that were in the military, and I didn't really spend any time talking to them. So for me, in hindsight, I know exactly why I joined. But, being in it, like it was not a blip on my radar. I didn't know anybody personally that had joined. Like I didn't know the process. It was like so foreign for me. So when I meet somebody that's like as a kid, somebody exposes that to them, and they're like wild and free and kind of like you described, it's so cool to know like, they went on to follow and pursue that path.
Yeah. Yeah. I watched all the movies. I was all in from a very young age.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
And so you knew like you wanted to go to battalion, you wanted to be a bat boy, you wanted to do that whole shebang, right?
Well, I didn't know the difference. Like I knew I wanted to be a Ranger, and I learned along the way that there was Ranger school. And when I went to talk to my recruiter, he's like, okay, you want to go to regiment. And I knew 2nd Battalion was up in Washington, and I wanted to go to Washington just to like do all the outdoor stuff and all that. And, so that kind of opened up my eyes a little bit more, but like for some reason, just like the name Ranger was, it's what I was going for. That's what I wanted.
For our audience, we talk to enough military veteran entrepreneurs. Can you explain the difference between, being Ranger qualified and being a bat boy?
Yeah. I think as far as I know, we're like the only ones that this little, I guess, problem pops up with, because you can't go to the Q course and then, go back and be a mechanic and say, I'm special forces, like you're in, and with Rangers, you can go to Ranger school, get the tab, and you're Ranger qualified. It'd be the same as like going to airborne school, getting the tab, you did your 5 jumps, you're airborne qualified, and then you go back to a non-airborne unit. And with us, Ranger school is just a part of it's a part of the process. So once you get there, you're a Ranger, you're in Ranger Regiment, Ranger Battalion. And then you have to go to school to continue your career inside of Ranger Regiment. And when we go to Ranger school, we're there with regular Army people, West Pointers, anybody can go, Navy, Marines, like anybody can go to Ranger school, but then they'll go back to their units, and we're the only ones who go back to actual Ranger Regiment.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's something that I mean, for me at this point, I don't hear people confuse it too much, but I know that we talk about it enough. I still get that question every so often. Let's go back a little bit to like your early childhood and give me a little bit of the background, sort of how you grew up, what really shaped you to like actually, pull the trigger, join battalion, and then further how your military career started to shape you and prepare you for what came later, which was, founding Wooby Hoody and becoming an entrepreneur.
Let's see. Grew up in South Central Kansas, like you said. A couple little small towns. I moved a few times. It was kind of interesting. Like, you're moving around. It's always hard starting a new school. I did it twice. So you go through the whole phase of being the new kid and make some friends, and then back to the new kid again, make some friends. So I think through all that, like my parents were divorced. I lived with my mom. I think through all that, like I was just kind of acting out as a kid. It just progressively got worse and worse. By the time, I was a junior in high school, we did this, it was a high school prank, but it ended up landing us in a lot of trouble. We did a small fireworks show at the local police station. And yeah, we thought it was hilarious for about an hour until we realized that, we were going to be in a lot of trouble. And then, yeah, but kind of like back to what I was saying with reading the Ranger handbook and everything. So I planned this thing out where, we did an offset infill. We set up an ORP. We all got in position. My buddy made a prank phone call to the police saying there was kids on the other side of town shooting off fireworks. And this, like I said, small town. I think there was like one cop working at night. So he goes over there to check it out. And we got another guy over there. And this is like right when cell phones were getting popular. So the guy over there had a phone, and then we had a guy with us who had a phone. And so as soon as he saw the cop over there, he called us and he's like, "Hey, he's here. If you're going to do it, like now's your chance." And I just remember we were all camoed up and everything. And I stick my head up over this bush and I see my buddy lighting this big smoke grenade and rolls it in. And we had fountains on both sides of the parking lot and guys across the street shooting off Roman candles and all this stuff. And it was like a little 5-minute fireworks show there. And then we were supposed to go back to the ORP, this big hill behind the police station. And I was the only one who ended up back there. And I was just sitting there watching, like you could see the parking lot. There's just all these cars coming in. I ended up seeing a helicopter that was like flying up from Wichita towards Valley Center. That's when I was like, all right, time to go. I linked up with a buddy somehow randomly. He was hiding past the ORP and we ended up linking up, went running all through town, ran to his house, we took his parents' car, drove it back to my house. We all jumped in a different car, drove by the police station. And by that time, there was probably like 50 cars there. Like, dude, yeah, it was bad. And the next morning, like the cops were there. They were they were rounding us all up, taking us to the police station, getting the stories. Like they knew exactly who it was. And when I went to go join, the recruiter was like, okay, so tell me what happened. Obviously this is going to be an issue. So I tell him the whole story and he's like, all right, you're going to have to get a waiver. So I have to go in and talk to this colonel at Met. And I tell him the whole story, and I'm telling him like, yeah, we did an offset. We had an ORP, da, da, da. And at the end of it, this guy's just like stone faced the whole time. He's not laughing. He doesn't think it's funny, none of that. And I'm just thinking in the back of my mind, like, oh man, like this is not going good. And at the end of it, he just goes, I think you'd be a great ranger. He signs the waiver and he's like, here you go. And just hands it to me. And I was like, all right, sweet, man.
Oh, dude.
So, yeah.
You know that had to have made his entire day to hear something like that. I don't know. For me, it would.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that, man. And what I really love is, prior to jumping on this show, you and I were talking a little bit about like military entrepreneurs and like foundational skills and stuff like that. And for our audience, what TJ's talking about, all these acronyms he's throwing out, he's just talking about tactical planning. So he's talking about like, they didn't willy-nilly just go shoot some fireworks at the police station. Like he actually put a thoughtful plan together. And to what we were saying prior to the show, it's like one of the reasons that military veterans make such good entrepreneurs, because we like learn to think this way. Clearly you learned prior to the military, which is really cool. And I'm sure extremely helpful for you in your military career. But we just like start to think in certain ways, and it's just like ingrained in everything we do. We don't think of doing something, or we don't act on doing something before we've like actually put a plan together with maybe some contingencies and like these other things that just make us like really powerful as entrepreneurs and business owners. And man, I just think that's so cool to hear as like a testament to what we were saying prior to the show, Cool. So you get in, you go to MEPS, you join the military. I think you had 7 combat deployments within 6 years. So super high op tempo, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just going back and forth, going back to back to back. Why did you decide to get out?
Yeah, it was 7 deployments. Yeah, right around there, 6.5, 7 years. And man, for me, it was just, I was kind of hitting that wall and I didn't realize I was hitting that wall. I was getting pretty burnt out because regiment had a different deployment schedule than, the conventional army and everybody else. When I first joined, we were doing 3-month deployments every 6 months. So you would deploy and I mean, you're just going the whole time. And then you come home and you start your training cycle over again. And then you're right back over there. And I think after 2 or 3 deployments, they changed it to 4-month deployments with 7 months back home. And it was, I don't know. It was just a lot. And looking back now, I see it clear. I was getting a pretty bad attitude about it. Mentally, I don't think I was in the right headspace anymore. I was looking for something else. I had a bunch of friends that had already gotten out and they were contracting, and staying in contact with them and talking to them, hearing about what it was like. Obviously the money they were making, it seemed, a lot more interesting to me, and just, switching things up and looking for something new. And I think it was what I needed at the time without realizing it, Yeah,
that makes sense. I personally haven't done any contracting, at least yet. Right. But having just got out recently, being an entrepreneur myself, I see the similarities. And I know like within special operations, which is primarily where we operate, right? You see a lot of guys get out and go to contracting. And at least for me now, I'm seeing more and more become entrepreneurs. And to me, it makes sense. We already have a fair amount of autonomy within special operations, depending on what you're doing. But like as a contractor, you have allegedly better pay. Sometimes you have bigger stints off. You still get to sort of scratch that itch, if you will. You get a high level of autonomy from what I understand. So that you painting the picture like that for me totally makes sense.
I think as far as, transitioning out and everything, it was definitely good for that, because the biggest thing I got to hold on to was going over there and getting to like hang out with the boys. And there was a lot of guys that I served with that were over there. I was meeting all sorts of new people that were all awesome. They were all rock stars. And I think it was just really good. And then obviously that tempo, you're kind of building your own schedule. And then when you're off, you can, if you got a family, you're home with your family. I was still single at the time. I started traveling. I traveled the world, Central, South America, all over Europe, and, enjoyed it. And it was a great way to decompress after all of that. You still get to hold on to the little bit that you like of like the camaraderie and fellowship and brotherhood and all that. But then you also get, to go, I guess, enjoy your life a little bit and kind of decompress.
Yeah, for sure. I could totally see that. So you did that for how long roughly?
About 10 years.
About 10 years. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you had more time contracting than you did in the military?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. That's awesome. So what was it like, I guess, did you hit another wall before you transitioned to start Wooby Hoody and, become an entrepreneur outside of that? Or what was your transition like from contracting?
No, as far as Wooby Hoody goes, I came across this book, 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss.
I'm familiar. Okay.
I read that. I had read it. I think this was like my third time reading it. And I was just kind of looking for something, because he makes it sound so easy. Yeah, start a business, start an online business. You can make all this money if you're working 4 hours a week. I haven't had a 4 hour work week yet, but yeah, working towards it. But
I don't know, dude, if you're anything like me, yeah. I don't know if you could do that. If I'll cram all this stuff into 4 hours, I'll just have, 36 other hours to do other things.
I'll go find something else to do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was one of those things. I mean, I'm sure you guys had the same conversations, but I just remember being out at ranges on deployments and stuff, and you pull out your Wooby and we start talking, and somebody's like, man, somebody needs to turn this into a jacket. And I was overseas at the time, and we were looking for him. Me and a buddy were like, surely somebody's done this by now. And we couldn't find anything. I think there was one company that had them, but they were sold out. And I mean, we looked for days trying to find them, and it still took probably 2-3 days. And I was like, oh shit, maybe this is my thing. So I just used that thing like a step-by-step guide. And that's what I did. Found a manufacturer. We started getting samples, started getting all this stuff made. We would get them shipped to us because since I was overseas at the time, I would get them shipped. My wife would take them to the jiu-jitsu gym and have different people try them on. And we would like make little adjustments and stuff. And it was, we bootstrapped it. I used my money. We put our first order in. It went good. I was like talking to guys over at work, like, hey, if I get these, you want some? And everybody wanted them. And then they started asking for other patterns and stuff. And they were taking them out. They were taking them out in town and getting them cut up the front and having the local seamstress put like zippers on them and stuff. So we switched it and started doing jackets instead of pullovers. And that took off even more. And like, it just kind of snowballed from there.
I love that. So just taking a little bit of a step back here, you were still contracting, and you started Wooby Hoody like on the side as you're contracting.
Yes.
Okay, cool. What was it that got you to read 4 Hour Work Week? Like that, to me, that seems like, were you like actively looking to build some income on the side, or like why that book? I'd love to hear more about that.
I think I was subconsciously getting primed for something else, whether I realized it or not. There was another book I found, Dave Ramsey, Total Money Makeover. It was in one of the nightstands in my room when I went over there, and I just pulled it out and read it. I wasn't even a big reader at the time. And it kind of broadened my horizon a little bit on just like money and, what you can do with it. Cause we don't really get an education on money in school. I didn't get one growing up, and it was just kind of like, this is your money. That's it. Once you spend it, it's gone. That was about my education on it. So that kind of opened up my eyes, and I started wondering if there was other books out there that could teach me more and try to, make me a better investor. I had a couple other small, endeavors that I tried. We had a restaurant in Miami for a while. That one failed. Like, I helped a couple friends with their businesses that didn't really go anywhere. And this was like my first go at it, where I was like, hey, I'm going to do this myself. It's not going to be a group of us. We're not, ask the council what they think on things. It's, I'm putting my money in. I'm the boss. I'm the decision maker. If it works, it's because of me. If it fails, it's because of me. And it took about 3 years. We were slowly building things up. And then, that's when kind of life changed drastically on me. And we had to ask ourselves, what are we doing? Are we running with this, or are we just going to give it up and I'm going to go get a regular job?
Yeah. Tell me more about that. What do you mean it changed drastically?
So it started, my wife was following these people online, and they were doing a big mastermind event. And I think at this point I'd already read Think and Grow Rich. And so I was familiar with,
I love that book.
Oh yeah. Hands down, one of my top books. I try to listen to it every year. It's an amazing book.
Man, that's a really good, I love that. That's a little gold gem right there. Listen to it every year. Similar to the Bible. For me, I get something different every time. I think I've listened to it 4 times now, and it's, it was written so long ago, like it can be a hard listen, but I get something different every single time, all around the same foundation, but just like something different sticks out to me. So I totally agree with you there. I think like reading it more than once. I mean, same could be said for any book, but especially that book.
I think is like you're growing and developing, and you're getting new understandings, and you've hit new milestones and everything. Like parts that made a lot of sense the first time you read it aren't really applicable anymore. And now this part's standing out. And I've noticed the same thing.
It's a good perspective.
Yeah. Napoleon Hill, all his books are really good, but Think and Grow Rich is like the staple for me of, listen to it every year. I had listened to that, and she wanted to go to this mastermind essentially. And I had never been in one. I was familiar with the idea, the principle of it. And I told her I would go down there with her. But it was more like her asking me over and over to go with her, because I was like, I'm not joining your cult,
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
We go down there, and it was so much more than I ever expected. Like the energy, the networking, the relationships. There's people that we met down there. This was in 2021 that we still talk to today. And I don't think I've seen them since, but we just keep in contact,
Yeah.
And, so I went down there. We did that. I came out of there with like a new perspective. And at this point, like I had started drinking, I think in 8th grade, and drank all through high school, drank all through the military. And, like in the military, it just kind of turns into an outlet for you. Everybody goes to hit the bar on the weekends. You come home from deployment, you're out at the bars, like you're trying to make up for lost time or something. And so I had been drinking a lot, and it was like a daily thing. I would say I was like functioning alcoholic. I would drink every day, but I was still up. I would go to the gym, still handling the stuff I needed to handle at work, at business and all that. But coming back from that, my boys were born in 2020, and this was like 2021. And we had gone out the night before, me and a friend, burn it down, got home, bar closes at 2, went home, kept drinking after that. And I woke up like on the living room floor in their little play area. And I could hear them in the kitchen, like as I picked my head up, like I'm still fully clothed, got my shoes on, got my coat on, just passed out in the living room. And as I pick my head up off the floor and I'm like looking into the kitchen, I see them, my 2 1-year-old boys, and they're like both like this. She's feeding them, and they'll like take a bite, and they can hear dad getting up. So they're looking over there. And it was like the first thing I saw was those 2 looking back at me. And like right then it was one of those life-changing moments for me that I was like, I cannot let this be the first memory for my boys. Is like dad drunk, picking himself up off the floor and was gone all night. I'm not there at breakfast. I'm not going to be there, as they get older and getting ready for school and all these other things. Like it was a lifelong goal of mine to be a good present father. And like that moment is when it clicked that I was failing. I was failing miserably at it. And so I got up, I went to the bathroom and threw up, which was also not common for me. After that, I came out of the bathroom and I walked into the kitchen, and I told my wife I got something to say. And she's a quick thinker, and she grabs her phone real quick and holds it up and hits record. And she's like, okay, go ahead.
Oh, dude. Kudos to her.
Yeah. I was like, all right. So now I have to, right? She's building the case against me. So I stand there and I was like, I think I said something along the lines of like, my name's TJ White. I'm going to get sober for 365 days and I'm going to turn Wooby Hoody into $1 million company. And that was my goal. That's where it all started. And after that, it was one of the things that I've learned is like, when you decide that you're going to like change your life drastically, life wants to confirm that you're serious about it and it will check you. And a change that big for me meant like a drastic check for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 2 weeks before I went to my next trip. And so I was kind of like coming up with this plan, what I was going to do. I heard a long time ago from my psychology teacher / wrestling coach that most people have an addictive personality. And if you get rid of one addiction, you're going to replace it with something else. So like my thinking was, okay, if I'm going to quit drinking, I need to replace that with something else. And let's make it positive. Let's make it something good. So I'm like, here's my workout. I had a whole bag full of books that I was bringing over. Like I'm going to get serious about reading. I'm going to start learning, start working out. I'm going to quit listening to, the music. I listen to a lot of country music and it's all like depressing. It's all about going to the bar and, and it would lower me, like mentally. I was in a sad, depressed state all the time, but it's what I enjoyed doing. That's where I liked being. So I was like, all right, I'm going to cut all that shit out too. Started finding like new playlists. I would wake up in the morning and hit play on this podcast that was like a 3-minute, just like positive message, like right when you wake up. And so that was my plan going into it. And the day I went over there, Memorial Day 2021 was like day one. And so I was like, all right, here we go, and 45 days later, it was 2021. That's when I don't know what we can say on here, but that's when the pandemic was going on and there were,
for sure,
certain things that you had to do if you wanted to keep your job. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And
okay,
there was a handful of us that got sent home who all said we weren't going to do it. And so now I'm about 45 days sober, flying home halfway through my trip. I didn't know it at the time, but as I got home, there was an email waiting for me that said, we no longer need your services. It took me 3 days to get home. And I just remember on those 3 days, I was sitting there thinking, I could probably start drinking again. I don't think anybody's going to hold it against me. The plan was 365 days, but, I wasn't expecting losing my job. And my wife's a stay-at-home mom. I have twin boys. She stays home with them. We bought our house in 2019. I got a mortgage, and it was kind of like this decision point of, are we moving forward with what we said? Or, we're going to go home and have a pity party for a little bit and figure something else out. And I decided that no matter what it took, I was going to stick to my plan and I was going to become successful at whatever it was. I was like, I don't care if I have to go be a janitor at school at night, be a bouncer at the bar back. Like, I don't care. The one thing that we have that we excel at to, be in special operations or any of that stuff is like, we can outwork the majority of people. Like, you don't get to stay in that environment unless you're an incredibly hard worker. And so that was like one of the things that I was like, okay, I know I have this. That's a skill of mine, is I'm a very hard worker. So worst case scenario, I'll just outwork everybody, the 1-to-1 gear ratio. I wasn't thinking about force multiplying or anything. It was just,
sure.
Yeah, I'll just go make money by working 20 hours a day and sleeping 4. That makes sense.
Sure.
So yeah, but I came home and I decided I was going to stay sober. And during that process, I kind of made friends with a guy. He had done real estate and I told him I needed to start working on my passive income. And he's like, dude, just buy a house. It's easy. And so, yeah, he made it sound super easy. And I wrote down on my calendar, this was July. I wrote down on my calendar that by Halloween, October, 31st, I think it is, 2021, I was going to own my first rental property. And
love it.
No clue. I had no leads. I knew nobody that did real estate in North Idaho, like none of that stuff. And we just started going for it. And long story short, we ended up getting our first rental property October 29th. So 2 days before I wrote it in my calendar that I would own it, we closed the deal and I owned it. And then that opened up a whole new can of worms on, like I had never worked on a house before. So it's a lot of YouTube, like figure it out, get over there. And again, like in my back pocket, I'm like, well, worst case scenario, I can just outwork everyone. And I did. That was the plan. It was 18, 20-hour days every single day. It was the house next door to us. So like once my wife put the kids to bed, she would bring the baby monitor over and set it there because it would reach. And like would be over there helping me till 2:00 in the morning and go back home and like pass out, wake up, eat some breakfast and just walk next door and get back to work. And yeah, that kind of started all the real estate side of it. And this is where we were trying to figure out, hey, are we going to keep going with Wooby Hoody? We're going to sell this thing off, finish selling everything and just shut it down. And her and I talked about it and we just decided like, yeah, we're going to keep going. And, the plan was 365 days, turn Wooby Hoody into $1 million company. And that's what we did. We just, we're not quite at $1 million company yet, but we've grown. We've more than doubled every single year since we made that little pact. Like it's been great. Just like focusing on the building and the growing and the scaling. And once you start really like dedicating your time and focus and energy to something, yeah, I mean, it's just taken off.
Oh man, I love that. So you're still sober. How long you been sober for now?
Since Memorial Day 2021. Have not ever dropped. Dude, yep.
I love that. So, well, kudos to you. Congrats on that, man. And I genuinely mean that from the bottom of my heart. That's such an accomplishment. I agree with you, or I guess I should say you're a psychologist, wrestling coach. That is a stellar combination. I grew up wrestling too. Something about wrestlers. I love talking to people that have that wrestling background as well. I feel like, you had mentioned something within the special operations community about like, we outwork everybody. I feel like part of it is like our standard is skewed. Like what we see is hard work. When you talk to other people, it's like their hard work is like, it's so skewed. And growing up as a wrestler, what I thought was hard was so different. I very vividly remember like it was the second event within selection and dudes were already falling out. And I remember thinking like, I no joke had days as a teenager in high school doing 2-a-days wrestling, sucking weight mentally in a way worse place than I was at that moment in selection and some of the dudes around me. And it just kind of like blew my mind. And so I just have so much respect for wrestlers, but psychology and wrestling, what a combination, man. But what he had said about us all having an addiction or like the people with an addictive behavior. I don't know how you said it exactly, but we're just trading one for another. I'd never heard that before, but sort of reflecting on my own life in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, I think that is so true. So to just head that off by saying, okay, what am I going to replace here, this one behavior for another behavior, I think is so smart. And, I know how challenging that can be. So like I said, man, congrats to you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. That's so cool. What do you think, man, like going through that sort of personal struggle while also building this company, right? What do you think has been like the biggest blessing in that challenge for you? What do you look at now from where you're standing and just like, man, I'm so grateful to have gone through that. Is there anything that stands out to you?
Yeah. The perspective shift, the mindset shift has been massive because coming from battalion, going into contracting and all that, you're confident with a lot of things that you're capable of. You've had to test yourself multiple times to get to that point in your life of, putting the beret on, getting the tabs, passing the different selections and courses and all that. But like when you're building your own business for yourself and it's not like there's blueprints out there, but obviously they all change, MET-T dependent, which is another acronym for everyone listening. Like when you plan a mission, it's mission, enemy, terrain, troops, tactics, and civilians on the battlefield. Like that means these are all variables that can change your mission. And this blueprint that you can get for your business, it's like, hey, this is how I built and scaled $100,000 a year business. Well, that's great. It worked for you. But if I take that same blueprint, I'm going to run into different issues and different problems that I'm going to have to solve on my own. And so just kind of learning that different mindset and that different perspective. And then I stuck with the mastermind thing. Like I joined a mastermind, like right when I was probably at my lowest point, no job, not knowing how we're going to pay the mortgage, buy groceries, pay bills. I joined another mastermind and I'm still in it to this day. And just changing my circle of the people that I'm around has helped change that perspective. And, now I look at things different of, these hard times, they're not hard because it's not necessarily that I'm doing something wrong. It's that I'm kind of peaking at the level that I'm at. And so it's that life coming back to check me again of like, hey, are you ready? And, you keep working, you keep pushing through it. Like what we were saying before we started recording was just, am I going over, under, around, or through this thing? But there's a solution out there that I have to find. And typically it's when you're at your lowest point and, business, life, whatever, from my perspective is it means you're about to level up. You're going through this because you're about to have a big breakthrough that's going to open things up. And it doesn't mean you're done after that. It just means, congratulations. Like you figured this part out. Now here comes the next challenge. And, and just having that, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they hit these points in their business. Most businesses go under within 3 to 5 years, and they hit these points in their business where they're just like, man, it's been 3 years. It's just been a grind. I don't think business is for me. And it's like, no, that's a part of the process. Nobody just starts a business and it blows up and like, yeah, there we go. Like they're just constantly problem solving. And if you can do it for long enough, you become an expert at it, just like with anything else you would do. And I think those are probably the biggest things, your circle, who you're hanging around. Mine's drastically changed. Having the right mindset going into business and building your business is huge. Like you have to understand that you're going to have problems. Your job as an entrepreneur is to solve problems. And yeah, can keep learning. I still get up and read every morning. I'm reading business books, personal development books. I wrote my book on, everything I learned in those couple years after all that, because it was just such a massive change. And I don't think even if I tried, I could go back to try to be the person that I was back then, because he's long gone now, and as developed as I thought I was, it's still changing. I'm still learning, I'm still evolving and adapting and figuring out new things that work and things that don't work. Most of the best lessons are coming from failures, not successes. I think those are probably the biggest takeaways that I have.
I love that, man. So many good like gems within that. Do you mind sharing what the mastermind is that you're in right now?
The mastermind that I joined it's called the DM Alliance with Mark Evans. Okay. And that very first mastermind that I went to, that my wife took me to, he was one of the speakers up on stage. And
oh, nice.
I really liked his message. I started following him on social media immediately. He was very family oriented, which, like I said, it was important to me. And he was incredibly successful, is incredibly successful. And so I was doing another security job out in Washington, and I was on social media just kind of scrolling through, and I saw a message that he posted, like, I'm starting a mastermind group, because he already had one, but it was, for very, very high level people, and I was not there. And so he's like, I'm starting this other one. If you're interested, DM me Alliance. I sat there and thought about it for probably 30 seconds. It was like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, well, fuck, man, you say you're in. So I sent the message and immediately got the response back, fill this thing out or whatever we did. And I joined that, and it's been massive. It's been life-changing. The relationship capital that we have now. I've done collabs with people in there for charity. I've had help with my business. I've been able to help other people with their businesses. We're in different parts. we're all at different levels in there, but this problem that this person's having, I already had over here. And I'm like, oh yeah, dude, that's easier, vice versa. Hey, this has never happened before. And I'll get 10 responses. Don't worry about it. This one's easy. Call my guy, or, call me at 1 and I'll help you. I'll help walk you through this. And yeah, so big fan of masterminds.
I heard you say that when, you started mentioning Think and Grow Rich and all that. I also appreciate that you called it a cult, because I too am a little bit of a skeptic. And man, the first time I heard about it, I was like, I don't know why, but like for some reason where I was at, person I was like, yeah, no, I don't need that. I'll be good. And I thought too, I was like, yeah, it's like a cult. And then I don't know if it was Think and Grow Rich or somewhere, but I saw a couple like really influential people that this was a commonality for them. So I was like, maybe I should take this serious, and eventually did. So I'm in a couple masterminds as well. I'm very familiar with it. And I think it's super powerful, which is why I wanted you to mention which one it was. There's everybody walks different paths, different journeys. There's so much stuff out there. So for anybody listening that's interested in something like that, man, you heard it from my man TJ right here.
It's been so life-changing for me that me, 2 other guys that were in there, and then our mutual friend Warsaw, like I got reconnected with him, and then Warsaw and I were working on something, and we had a conversation in the mastermind, and we literally did a spinoff. We've started our own mastermind because of this
That's
principle.
right.
Like we've all seen it. We've all been a part of it. We know the power, how it consolidates your timeline exponentially by having, 4 minds, 10 minds working on the same problem, as opposed to one person sitting there trying to figure the problem out by themselves. And yeah, so we started our own called Military to Entrepreneur. It's just the 4 of us. We're in the military and we've started our own businesses, which is where the name comes from. It's open to everyone. You don't have to be prior service or active duty or anything. And it's our way of just trying to give back to the community, because we've been helped so much in all our different businesses, and we all come from different walks of life, but we see the power of that. And it's like, hey, if we can spread this message and, start helping other people out along the way, it's only going to help us,
I love that, man. That's so cool. Such a good way to give back to. And the crazy thing is, at least from my experience, like when I'm giving back to other entrepreneurs, it's still propelling me forward. And like, I mean, 1, it's fulfilling, but 2, like sometimes I'll like say something and I'm like, well, I used to do that, but I kind of stopped. But now that I'm telling you, I really should make sure that I'm doing that too, and just having that. And then sometimes you get feedback, and, you realize things that you used to do don't work anymore. And so I love it for that too. Ben, that's good. So we've talked a lot about a lot of the internal struggles and challenges that you've had. I'd love to hear some of the external. You had brought up like manufacturing and stuff like that. What would you say or I guess, you can share a few of them, but some of your like biggest challenges running an apparel company and going from, a limited amount of business acumen to like now like running this company that you got manufacturing outsourced. Like you guys are crushing it. I'd love for you to share some of those challenges and maybe how you resolved them as well.
I think just at every level, there's been different challenges. And, we started out, we had the hoodies in the shop behind our house, and my wife would pack everything on the kitchen table. And then after that, we actually, as we were building the real estate portfolio, we turned our primary residence into another rental, and we bought another house. And so now that shop behind our house is a shop behind the rental. And living in North Idaho, like, it snows. So she would have to drive through the alley to go to this shop and, get all the hoodies, drive them back home, pack them up, drive them back to the post office. And, she hated that. So it's like, all right, well, let's get our first office space. And, we did that whole deal. We bought our first commercial property. It was supposed to last us, like, I would figured anywhere 2 to 4 years. Within a year, we had completely outgrown that place. So we just moved into a new office, which is probably more than double of what we had. Hopefully this lasts longer than a year, but we got room to grow here. So,
yeah, hopefully that one will last more than 2 years, huh?
Yeah, I'm hoping. And then, dude, I mean, it's been everything, you know, like that, like the space and, you know, trying to make it make sense time wise. And then, you know, this year, the biggest thing that I've learned is like money allocation, because it's smaller. It was a lot easier and I didn't have to pay as much attention. Well, I probably still needed to. I just didn't. It was working with what we were doing. But now, like, I'm really getting hit with like, are we spending our money correctly and in the right places at the right time and making sure we're set up? So this year it's been kind of like seeing the red flags. We haven't had any major issues or setbacks, but I've been seeing these red flags throughout the year. And so again, back to the mastermind, one of the guys in the mastermind group helped start the book Profit First. Talking with Mark, I was kind of telling him about what we had going on. And it's just like, yeah, I got to figure this out. I don't really know how. And one of the things we talk about is make sure you ask the right questions. So I was kind of chewing on this for a couple of weeks and I couldn't come up with a question that I needed to ask, you know, kind of kicking it around. But it was just one of those things. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I didn't know how to ask the question. I just knew something was about to go wrong. And I was just talking to him about him and he's like, dude, reach out to Ron. Started Profit First, and Profit First is just, you know, you take your profits first from your company and then you've allocated everything to the correct accounts. It's kind of like the envelope method. You know, you're putting money away each month for, you know, taxes, product acquisition, payroll, all this stuff. So you know that you're good to go, but you already have your profit. And so you're never doing what every single entrepreneur does is, you know, I'm just going to put all the money back into my business and I'll pay myself later. And yeah, you can do that.
And then the money disappears and you're like, dude, where did it go?
Yeah. You can do it for a while, but eventually you start asking questions. And so I did a call with him and, you know, we set that whole thing up and now we have that running and we're still kind of in the test phase, but it was just another one of those things of that was our problem this year was making sure we had money for marketing, new products and just all this different stuff. And again, just asking questions and solving problems and not throwing my hands up and be like, well, we screwed it up. That's the end of the company. Sorry, everyone, got to let you go. And yeah, so figured that part out and, you know, that's where we're at now.
Oh man. Yeah, that's so good. And, you know, you brought up real estate too. One of the things we talk about on this show is the entrepreneurial wealth journey and sort of how you can go from nothing to, you know, cash flow positive and then rolling that money into something to generate a large amount of wealth. I love real estate. Sounds like you do too. Has that sort of been your journey too? You've been taking that excess cash flow from your company and just buying rentals here and there, or what's that look like for you?
For the most part, that's what we've been doing. It's been I guess you could say a side project of mine. I really enjoy it. And again, it's another one of those things of, yeah, I like real estate, but real estate can mean a lot of things. And I'm kind of learning, like I've been a landlord. We got the commercial property. We got commercial properties. We got some multifamily stuff. And, it's just kind of been one of those things of like trying each one out and seeing what I like and kind of learning that I don't like being a landlord. The thing that I like the most is doing the deals. Like I like finding the deals. I like the negotiating. I like playing with the numbers and all that. And then once I get it, it's like, shit, now I gotta start working on this thing, you know?
Not so much the asset management. It's more so the acquisition.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
So
I agree.
It's been fun learning that whole process. And, you know, I'm excited. We got a lot of big opportunities coming up this year that, you know, we're working on some stuff, internationally that we're trying to do. And yeah, it's a part of the game. You know, we build, we learn, we grow, we make some mistakes and figure out something new. And I like this, I don't like that. And yeah, just making it happen.
I love that, man. So one of the things that you'd mentioned earlier, I can't remember how you had said this, but, you had basically talked about this loop, like this, like continuous growth loop, right? It's like we solve a problem, we crush it, you know, and then come back around. Tell me a little bit more about what that's meant to you in like your entrepreneurial life, and sort of some tips and tricks for our audience on how you stay committed to that growth. Like, because at least for me, I feel like it can be challenging on both sides. Like sometimes that cycle of growth, you can start to feel like burnout. I've felt that. And then other times I've also got like really disconnected on, are you familiar with the book, The Gap in the Game?
Yes.
Okay. So that sort of concept, right? So like for our audience, it's this idea of where we're living. Like, are we always only looking at what we don't have and continuing to repeat the cycle? Or are we appreciating the growth for what it is and just continuing to grow because that's in our nature? And to me, it's been a little bit of a fine line. Sometimes I'm like, I get to go and then I'm like, wait, hold up. Am I like living in the gap right now? Because I usually start to feel that way when I consistently am reflecting and I'm always in a frustrated state. And I'm like, wait, there's no way I haven't been growing. So like, why am I frustrated? And then I sort of reflect back and I have this realization. I'm like, all right, dude, I'm living in the gap right now. I need to fix this. So for you, what does that mean? And how do you stay committed to growth?
For me, it goes back to the day I decided to get sober. You have to find your why. You have to know what it is. And I have, I've built this image in my mind of what my life looks like. And that's what I'm working towards, and, even on the slow days, the hard days, it's easy to go home and like spend time with my family and like, okay, yep, we're going to get up again. We're going to do this tomorrow and we're going to keep going until we get there because, my kids are watching me, my wife's watching me. And like I said, it's very, very important to me to show my sons like, hey, this is what you can do, not just tell them you can go do whatever, but actually show them like, this is the house you were born in. This is where we move. This is where we move. This is how, they're watching us. They're here almost every day. When they get out of school, they come here. They see what we do every day. So they see me come home from the gym, whether eating breakfast, like they know dad gets up to go hit the gym or go do jujitsu, whether still sleeping. And so that's my why. And I think that's very, very important is you have to know why you're doing it, because when things get hard, just like you saw in selection or like what I saw going through RIP or Ranger School, man, if it's not in your heart, you're going to get cold, wet, hungry, and tired. And you're going to start coming up with reasons why you don't want to be there, and they get louder and louder the longer you're there. And, so I think finding your why is the big one. And then again, just that understanding of like looking at it as things are getting hard because you're about to have a breakthrough, not things are getting hard because, you're being punished for something that you did 10 years ago. And this is karma coming back around, or, this guy just has it out for you. That's why he did that to you. Like that shit's for the birds, man. Like don't even entertain those thoughts. It's every single time things start getting hard, I just keep reminding myself like, all right, you're about to have a big breakthrough. Something massive is coming your way and you're going to be glad that you stuck it out. And that's kind of my internal philosophy. What's going on in my head is all these different things are going on is remember the why, and the harder it gets, the bigger the breakthrough.
Man, I love that so much. There's this thing that I started doing when I'm struggling with like belief. I'm looking back in my journal, and journals where I put, most of the stuff that I can't remember, at least for me, right? And so I sort of am looking for patterns. And that's one of the patterns that I saw early on was, every time I'm like the most stressed or I'm really, really struggling, then shortly after I start writing about like this new breakthrough, this growth, right? I'm like describing in the journal growth. And so I love that you said that. And I would challenge anybody that's listening to this to look at that pattern in your life. I promise you will see it. If you are oriented towards growth, you will see that there's going to be a breakthrough after that. And I think to your point, once you see that and you believe in that, and having that is a reminder there, it's so powerful to help you keep going when you're just like, you're just crushed, because everybody, it doesn't matter if it's $100 million company or $1 million, 100,000, like it's going to feel crushing at all those levels. I love that, man.
I just saw this morning, after my workout, I'll go sit in the sauna, and a buddy had sent me something on Facebook, and it's this guy who built this, like $600 million company. It's like a security company. And he was getting interviewed by a guy and, asking him what's biggest lessons, what's your best year, da, da, da. And he actually said that same thing. He's like, you'll see as you say that you want something and you start taking steps towards it, you're going to get hit. Life will come crashing down around you, and you have to know like why you're doing it, and you have to stick with it. And he's like, and that's when I leveled up. Every single time everything was burning down around me, that's when the company grew. And yeah, it's not like a one-off thing. I've noticed this with several entrepreneurs that I've talked with. Like, they're like, yeah, it gets hard, and then you have a big breakthrough.
Then it gets hard again. I love that, man. Are there any habits or like systems that you have in your life that you've put in place to help you stay on track? Anything that really comes to mind that you could share with our audience?
Yeah, for me, it's my morning routine, 100%.
Okay. You're a morning person?
Yes. Wasn't always. Too. Yeah, wasn't always. I get up at 4 a.m. every day, go to the office, and then I'll sit down and read. I'll do my meditation. It's about 10 minutes, working on something else that somebody sent me. It's a lot more like visualization type meditation, and then get ready for the gym, and I go hit the gym. And then after that, I'll come home, help get the kids ready for school, get them dropped off. And then I go to the office, and like, I'm checking all my blocks in there. I got my quiet time. I'm able to learn something new. I'm able to sit down and focus and, validate where I'm trying to go, why I'm trying to go there, what it looks like when I'm there, and then go do something physically that is like energizing and motivating for me. And it helps change the mindset for the day. I'm positive, I'm productive, I've accomplished things. Most people are still in bed at this point, and then I still get to spend some time with the family, and then it's off to work. Let's go.
I think for me, like the key takeaway is just preparing yourself for the day, whatever that looks like. I know there's a lot of good stuff out there on morning routines. Mine's similar to yours in that, like, I have quiet time. I read my Bible. Sometimes I do journaling. Sometimes I do meditation. I kind of switch it up. I work out as well. Like, I noticed this first with running, but when I get a good hard workout in, whether that's, lifting or running or rowing or whatever, it puts me in such a good mood. And it's like, the more I realized it, the more I just became in tune with it, to the point where like I have to have an active recovery day, because like when I don't do anything, I just feel weird. I feel off. For me, it's just totally about like being ready for the day. And like, it's almost like, going into a fight or going into like a wrestling match. It's like, you're not going out there in a defensive posture. Like, there's offensive, there's defensive, but you're going in that match to win. Like you're going in with an offensive posture. And when you get your mind right in the morning, whatever that looks like, you're going at that day in an offensive posture. And yeah, there's going to be moments where you might pull back and get defensive, but like, it's an offensive posture. And it just makes for, like, at least for me, such better days versus just like kind of like waking up, not really sure what I'm going to do. It's like, oh, let's do some work here. Oh, what's the most important thing? Like, you're just kind of bouncing around. That's usually how it goes for me.
I feel like when I don't wake up and do that, I guess because I've done it for so many years now, I feel like I never truly wake up because I didn't get to read. I didn't get. And it doesn't matter. Like, it can be 100 push-ups, like, okay, workout's done. Like, mentally I did it and I feel better. And there was one other thing I wanted to add to that is, gratitude. It's like first thing when I open up my eyes is gratitude. And I think it's easier for guys like us, where you've been to these terrible places and been in these terrible situations. Like, man, I wake up every morning and I'm like so grateful. I see my kids, I see my wife. We have a roof. Like, I'm awake. I woke up that morning. So yeah, that's right when my eyes open. I start with gratitude and then head into the rest of it.
I'm so glad you added that. And I never really thought about that. You just saying that right now, but That makes sense to me why like guys like that, like us, can have an appreciation for gratitude. Man, I don't know when I realized this, but at some point within the last 4 years, I realized like when I feel like true joy is when I'm the most grateful. Like, and it doesn't really matter. Like I've journaled about it and looked, and it's like my external doesn't change. Like I can have, 5 deals that are about to fall through, or 5 deals that are about to close, and there's like tons of profit coming, or, it can be my wedding anniversary, or like whatever. It doesn't matter. Like the external doesn't really matter. But like if I'm in a grateful state, like I'm appreciative of it. And when I'm not, it's like, it doesn't really matter what's in front of me. It's like never good enough. So I love that you mentioned that. That's something that like, more recently, I've been trying to figure out more and more, like, what is it that I'm doing that's like allowing me to sort of feel gratitude, like on the spot, like as a part of like a morning routine or just like throughout my day or whatever. I'm really glad you mentioned that. That's good, Matt.
I know they've done a million different studies on it, but it can be like the simplest, smallest little thing, like, man, I'm glad I woke up today. You can be in the shittiest situation ever, but you're like, at least I got that. At least I'm still breathing. It does something to your mind that just changes everything for the rest of your day. And you're looking at things different. You're executing different. You're talking different. You show up different because you're essentially just grateful for what you have. And, it doesn't matter if the deal falls through. To me, it's like, okay, it fell through because only the best things ever happened to me. So that's why that thing fell through. It wasn't the best thing that could have happened to me. That's why it didn't work. So I'm grateful that fell through. And just like, you're constantly just owning the situations.
Absolutely. I know this will resonate with you having twins, but I have 3 boys, and my oldest, we took so much video of him when he was younger. And I'm so grateful for that. And so this past weekend, I was like just going through my phone, and like on iPhone, it has memories and stuff like that. And this memory popped up of him when he was like 2.5. And I was like just hearing his little voice and like his posture towards me and everything like that. And that interaction, dude, it just hit me. And I was like, you know what? I remember those days and like how good they are and they've been. And like, I truly don't know how many more I have left. Like, and that's not to be like dark. Like I don't, like, I have no clue, man. And what's even more crazy is I have no control. Like truly, I don't have any control, but what I can control is like the here and now. And so I'll tell you, like the last couple days. So Christmas Eve, I worked a little bit. Christmas, I didn't work, but man, I appreciate it. And I cherish that time so much more. And I can tell you on about like 3 or 4 different occasions, I very consciously was like, dude, I'm just going to embrace this and just really enjoy it. And I don't know, there's something different about this Christmas than others. And I think having gone through that, like I said, that weekend prior, just it kind of like set the whole tone. And I just like, I mean, there wasn't, I just embraced it, man. It was cool, man. So I love that you brought that up.
I think you're exactly right. And you brought something to my mind that has been told to me by our coach, Mark. And he always says, control the controllables. And like, that's exactly it. You can't control tomorrow. You can't control, if the deal falls through. You can't control what the economy is going to do, like where the next war starts, and you can't control any of that, but you can control those moments of like, hey, it's Christmas. I am going to be here. I'm going to be present. Like, this is mine. I'm going to soak it all up, and this is mine.
Control the controllables. Love it, man. Cool, dude. Well, TJ, on that note, man, what's on the horizon for you? And where can our listeners check you out, connect with you more, connect with all the good things you're doing?
We have our mastermind group, Military to Entrepreneur. It's ent.com. If you guys are interested in that. I'm on Instagram mostly. So TJ White RGR. That's where you can find me on there. And yeah, DM me. It's always me talking. I don't have a I don't have a virtual assistant or anything else. Like that's me right there. So yeah, reach out anytime.
What about Wooby Hoody? Is it woobyhoody.com? WOOBYHOODY.com. Is that right?
Yep, that's it.
Awesome. And if you're in the military, I don't need to tell you how good a Wooby Hoodie could be, or you can imagine it could be if you don't have one, if you're lame like that. But if you haven't been in the military, you also need to check it out.
You can't go wrong.
We didn't even get to dig into like the material and stuff like that. But yeah, man, they're amazing. They feel really good.
It's made out of magic. I still can't explain it, but it's awesome.
I love it. Made out of magic. Cool. Well, TJ, thank you so much for coming on, man, and sharing your powerful story with us. I know it's going to bring a ton of value to our listeners. And man, I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, man. It was an honor. I appreciate it.
Of course, dude. All right. Till next time. We'll see you.